So many of you triathletes are used to, or will do at some stage here, a type of test, the classic one being an FTP test. And a question we've been recently asked is, how can you maximise your performance during an FTP test? Whether it is your first one, maybe it's the one that you haven't done for a very long time, or maybe it's a repeat test, and you essentially want to get the best result possible for you. So here we really want to share with you probably 5 to 6 different things that aren't usually talked about, but can really make a huge difference with you maximising your performance during this type of test. Now, the purpose of the test is to achieve the highest power output that you can during the 20-minute test. So our first tip is you've got to have an idea of roughly a power output to work towards. Now, I know that's very tricky if you've never done one before, but there's plenty of guidelines online as to what different types of ability a person can achieve. So it might be, for example, that you're thinking, I've never done this before, but I'm going to go in at maybe looking to hold around about 250 watts, and then I'm going to gauge it from there. If you're lucky, obviously, and you've done the test before, you will know your previous best score, and that will give you a specific target to work towards. But the key thing to understand is what you're trying to achieve with this is what we call critical power. It is that highest power that you can achieve over a period of time, 20 minutes. But what will commonly happen is you won't just start pedaling and get to that power output and then battle to hold it there. For many of you, there's a natural tendency, myself included, to, because your legs are fresh, you'll start up actually a bit higher in terms of maybe by 10-15% your power output when you start. And then just over the next 2 minutes, that power output will start to decrease down to where your target power output might be. So for example, it might be you need to hit 292. You start off at about 340 and then that gradually comes down. That's a very common way to be able to attack this. So don't just feel you've got to start bang on that point and stay there. Another really important thing to consider is how the first 5 minutes feel. What will happen is, as your body starts to adjust to require more oxygen at the muscles, your heart rate and your ventilation will increase quite rapidly during that first 5 minutes. And often people can judge what the next 15 minutes will be based off that first 5. But what will commonly happen is you will have a sudden increase in things like heart rate and ventilation over those first few minutes. But then the increase of that will start to steady on off a little bit and climb slowly. So it's knowing in the back of your mind that even though the first 5 minutes might feel like you're getting a bit of a blow on, that you're not going to keep fatiguing at that same rate. And that's just something that will give you that little bit of confidence to keep that power on early and not feel like or panic that you're going to drop on off. So as we go through the test, your mind will start to play games. So we call it almost like the devil on one side and the angel on the other. The wonder of, can I hold this power output or am I going to struggle? And one of the dangers people can get into, which doesn't help performance, is they start to make assumptions on how things are going to be 4 minutes down the line, 7 minutes down the line. You don't need to worry about that. A really good tip is to break up the 20-minute test into micro blocks. We like to use 2.5-minute blocks. So say, for example, once you've kind of got that first 2.5 minutes out of the way and you've adjusted to the pace, you're just going to then focus on the next 2.5 minutes at holding your target. Once you've done that, you're going to focus on the next 2.5 minutes at holding that target. And that target might slightly adapt as we go into the session, but you'll know roughly where it should be. And by breaking the longer task down into these bite-sized chunks, it keeps our mind focused on the task of the here and now, and it doesn't start to make us presume and make assumptions about what we're capable of later down the line. The worst thing that you can rely on during fatiguing exercise is what your mind's telling you, because it's emotions, and emotions aren't often accurate when it comes to fatigue. The thing you can focus on are the objective things, the time that you've currently got left available, and the power output that you're actually pushing. The next thing that we often like to say, and again, some people have to hold a fixed position on a test, but for a lot of you don't, is over the first half, feel free to change your cycling position a bit. So I often describe this a bit like spreading the fatigue out in your legs. If you're in one fixed position for that first half, you can sometimes feel that the fatigue's almost pooling very much into specific areas of your muscles, and your quadriceps and your hips. But sometimes it's quite nice just to drop out of that main power position on a bike like this, obviously because we're not moving, it's in a relatively upright position. But sometimes just to drop onto the drops, go onto the hoods, just get those little alterations in hip angle and knee angle that can just feel like you're spreading the fatigue out a bit. However, what we do say is for that second half, that last 10 minutes, focus on staying in that power position, tunneling your energy and obviously tunneling where you're focused, and then go from there. But to the first half, that can be a cool little way just to almost keep your mind wondering a little bit and not feeling like the fatigue's hitting you in one certain. Another technique which is really cool that you can use as well is, again, it's where you're focusing your mind, and it can be to do with words that you're thinking or actions that you're thinking about. So for me, for example, I like to think about words as fatigue's creeping in that really evoke speed, power and smoothness. Now they're different things for different people, but that allows me to keep my pedaling staying aggressive, but staying smooth, keeping the quality to it. You can also think about maybe simple things about pedal technique. For me, I like to think about and visualize when I look down at where the pedals are going is where I'm going to hit each stroke of the pedal. I won't do that the whole FTP test, but again, it's a nice mental distraction to keep the quality of what I'm doing, but again, keep my mind off some of the more fatiguing stuff that's going on within my breathing and my legs themselves. And a final one, it sounds so simple, but often overlooked, the environment that you train in. So getting great music on. That might not be what I like, but it might be the type of music that you like. Put your bike in a position that you know is going to help you get through the test. Don't just put it right up against the wall. Also, again, get your fluids by you. Everything's ready to go. So it means when you're going into the start of that session, we're starting out in a mentally ready to go, purposeful state. So again, mentally, we can be more resilient as that fatigue starts to creep on in and we really start to push towards that red line. So, whole host of tips there, anybody can use them, but again, bringing all those bits together can make the difference on being able to push out those few watts extra for your next FTP test or any type of testing that you might be doing with your swim, bike and run.